Should have put some of the good stuff in, What's going on, everybody? Troy Rawlings here, and welcome to another exciting episode of Meet the. You may be like, Troy, so exciting about it. Everybody's excited. All the people exciting. This is an exciting time. It's amazing. All kinds of stuff going on. I usually don't date the shows, but since we're in a different dispensation of time, different era, in this human race on planet Earth, it is April 2020. And if you remember April 2020, because some of you watching this later on, everything seems cool. Might be one of our people with a mask on. It may look like Mad Max Beyond Thunder, don't have. Anyway, speaking of Mad Max, we call transition. Our guest tonight, this brother is pretty amazing. When you say triple threat, he is that. He is definitely a triple threat, whether he tried to be or not. Comedian, actor, singer, one and only. The main event, the main attraction. When you're looking for him, you're looking for action. Mr. Rick Younger. What's going on, Rick?
Nothing much, man. I'm just chilling. I'm happy to be here. I might cough from time to time. And since it's April, it means it's allergy season. I also have asthma. I have to give that disclaimer because now with coronavirus, as soon as you cough, everybody's looking at you like you crazy. I'm like, look, man, I done already gone to the doctor. I'm fine. I got medications. I got inhalers. I got nebulizers. I got all the stuff I need. So,
right.
Good.
Drink a little water. Drink some water.
Feel free to edit some of these coughs out.
No, I want you to have inhaler. I want you to do everything that you need to do so people will be like, man, I remember the last time I saw Rick. Like he was just online yesterday. Calm down. But let's go back. All right. We'd like to jump right in on the meet. Where are you originally from, Rick?
I'm originally from Baltimore.
Be more. I'm gonna make sure. Because some people I meet in Be more, and they were like, "Oh, from But
originally from Baltimore, born and raised in Baltimore, Baltimore City Public Schools, Harriet Tubman Elementary School, Roland Park Middle School, Poly class of and then went to University of Maryland.
Yes. And what did you study at the University of Maryland?
Well, I got my degree in American Studies with minors in Afro-American Studies in radio, television, and film. But that was a long journey to that because I started out pre-engineering and I did a little government politics. I did some radio, television, and film. And I was, I pledged. So it was like, after a while, I was like, what do I need to do to get
Am I going to leave here?
To get out of here. So I went with American.
When professors bring you in as Rick, can I talk to you for a second? I need some advice, Rick.
Like, what you gonna do? But yeah, so but American Studies was actually a great degree for me because it's the study of American culture, the reasons behind the history, and as comedians, that's what we are, studiers of the culture, And so and not like anybody asked for my degree anyway, but so I guess it's good that I did study something that kind of helps me with what I do for a living as far as being a comedian and an actor and performer.
And I have to admit, you're one of the names when I was coming up and doing comedy and started readily producing shows and stuff. Even in Baltimore, whether you knew or not, the name Rick Younger, maybe because you just have a famous sounding name, but I've always heard your name when it came to comedy, something. I've always heard Rick Younger. And it was when I feel like I met you before, but when I actually met you, I think one of the first times we met, it was at a comedy show when I got my first comedy night. It was Wednesday Night Live. We went down to old events. And you were in town. I think you were already living in New York, but you were in town. Right. And came through and hit and always been gracious. But just pedigree wise, if you guys have never seen Rick, you definitely want to catch him on Facebook, Periscope, Instagram, wherever you are. He does this breakfast morning thing. But the great thing about it is this mofo takes requests while he's making breakfast. And as of yet, over the past 5 years that I've seen him doing it. 5 years or so, 6 years.
Yeah,
I've seen Breakfast Joint. I've never seen him not know the lyrics to a song.
I know a
Like,
lot of lyrics to a lot of songs, and if I don't know the whole song, I know enough lyrics to sing the song where you know what I'm singing about.
now
I
was
know enough of the
top,
verse and enough of the chorus.
now were you in the top 40 band? Was it how's that
Well,
happen? Was it karaoke? Because
yeah,
karaoke
well,
wasn't around.
I come from a singing family. And grew up in church. So my musical influences are gospel, R&B, soul. Growing up, when I grew up, it wasn't as much of a separation in the music industry.
Right.
Like you had bands like Earth, Wind and Fire in Chicago, and Sly and the Family Stone, and these bands appealed to everybody, black and white, and there'll be dudes like. A lot of people to this day, I'm always finding that people don't know that. I guess you wonder where I've been. Since I'm the love within. That's a white guy singing that song.
Bobby Caldwell, right?
Right, and it's like Bobby Caldwell and Buzz Skaggs, and so it's like I just learned so many types of songs and heard so much music. My father loved country music. Like I can do Kenny Rogers medley that will people be like, what? Yeah. So yeah. So I was always around a lot of music and was always singing. So I've been in gospel groups. I've been in bands. Like I still go to Baltimore and sing with my family band. Our current name is the Powell Younger Project. My cousin Brian Powell plays guitar, and of course my brother and myself, we're the Youngers, and all of the other members of the band are guys who we played with ever since we were like in high school. And so I still go and gig with them, and we do all kinds of stuff. So it's like, that's how I know so many types of songs. It's because I've just always sung lots of songs, and I've always listened to a lot of different types of music. And as a singer, you always want to be able, you hear a song you like, so you want to be able to sing it. And so you learn the lyrics.
Now, what was your first love? Obviously, did you start singing before anything else, or?
I mean, singing is the first thing I remember doing. Like, I remember doing that like at the age of 3 with my brother and my cousin. I think, if you can sing, singing is usually the first thing you gravitate towards. But I always had a personality. I was always, cutting up and doing stuff to make people laugh. And I remember, like, as I got older, I would do things like, even when I was singing, I would find ways to get on stage and be funny in between songs and while we're setting up. And so it was kind of like, when you can sing, you kind of like, singing is something where if you can do that, you can do it, and people know you can do it when they first hear you. As you know, comedy is subjective. It's so many, there are people who are hilarious to you that other people think are not funny at all,
Right.
And so it's like, it's so much about what a person likes as far as their style of comedy. It can even be the situation that you're in. I remember one time I did a show out in Long Island. That's before I lived in New York. And I was traveling with Brooklyn Mike, and I was doing, Drew Frazier was the host of the show at this place, I think it's called Nagasaki. And we had just done some shows down in Brooklyn and rode out to Long Island to do we were like hitting all these spots in one night. So what we did not know when we got there was that a fight had just gone on in the club. So I came up and I am performing the same stuff that was killing at these other clubs I did earlier, was getting nothing. Because I had no idea that a fight had occurred. They weren't ready for comedy. They were still reeling from the fight, still talking about the fight. Meanwhile, Brooklyn Mike is waiting to go on. He finds out all the stuff that has happened, and he comes up on stage, starts talking about the fight, and then starts doing jokes about people fighting, and then goes into his material. And so anybody who's at that show thinks I'm awful and thinks Brooklyn Mike is amazing. And he is, but I'm just saying, it's like, so many things that can make it so that even though you're funny, on any given night, somebody could see you and be like, that guy's not funny. Because when I saw him, and that's the thing about comedy. Comedy is one of those things where people judge you based on when they saw you. Like if you go to see, like back in the day, if you went to go see Michael Jordan, and that was the one night he scored 6 points, you wouldn't decide that Michael Jordan sucks because the night I went to see him, he only scored 6 points. You understand that even Michael Jordan has a bad night. But when it comes to comedy, people are like, you better be funny to me tonight, or you're not funny. So,
and then depending on where we come from the Baltimore, anywhere there's urban comedy.
Yeah.
You got a night where a fight breaks out. You got a time where everybody broke. You got a time where somebody's upset and they on the front row like, I told you leave me alone. And coming up, like, we came to laugh, which are mostly we call them mainstream audiences.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you better make me laugh.
Right.
Which are,
well, I think you're right. It's also the experience. If you lead, we just kind of lead a life, not all of us, but a lot of us lead a life where it's like, if I spend my money and I go out, I have an expectation that you're going to give me my money's worth. And then you throw in the fact that most of the time when guys are going to do stuff, they're doing it because their woman wanted to do it. So if he's at the comedy club because she wanted to be there, but he didn't want to be there, he like looking at you like, man, I'm only here because of her. You better be funny. Right. Now, if he chose to go and he likes you already, or like he decided he wanted to go see comedy, he'll be ready to laugh. But otherwise, he's sitting there like this, body language all closed off, and he like, see. So they just, okay, all right. So yeah.
Yes. So when did you make the trek? When did you make the trek to New York? This is a key thing, because from Baltimore, educated brother. Now, did you go to New York first, or did you go through college and then say, hey?
No, I actually started doing comedy like right before I graduated from college. So right after I graduated, and I started doing comedy in DC because University of Maryland, although it's in Maryland, is right outside of DC and closer to DC than it is to Baltimore. So I started performing in the DC area. A lot of comedians, that consider me a DC comedian because that's where I started. But yeah, so I started. It was like me, Donnell Rawlings, Joe Claire, Red Grant, Dominique, and T-Rex, and a lot of those that crew. Right after I got out of school, I started working, but I already started doing comedy. So I was going out each night, most of the time down to DC to go do stand-up. And I started making a little bit of money doing it. And it was kind of like, I kind of got the idea, because when I went to school, my whole thing was I wanted to write, produce, and direct for television and film. And so once I started doing comedy, I was like, hey, I thought about a lot of my comedic influences, like Eddie Murphy and Damon Wayans. And I was like, they started as comedians, and, they've gotten to movies, and they do a lot of creating of their own material and work. And I was like, that's how I'll do it. And so the other thing about it was that compared to music, at the same time, I was going into studios and recording, but every time I would go in, people would try to get me to sing like what was prevalent at the time. And I'm like a gospel soul singer. I can sing a song each time. I can sing it different based on how I feel. So I didn't want people telling me how to do it. Meanwhile, I'm doing stand-up where I'm on stage by myself, totally in control. And the control freak in me was like, I'm going to do this, and then I'll get back to the music and do it the way that I want to do it. So that's kind of how comedy took the lead. And through comedy, I got into acting because I was performing down in DC, and somebody saw me and asked me to come and audition for one of those Black gospel stage plays. And so I auditioned. I did a play called What Goes Around Comes Around by David E. Talbert. He's gone on now to direct movies. He directed First Sunday and a couple other movies. So that got me into acting, which of course, once you start acting, you get the bug. And so then I was like, I'm going to really study this. So what I did was I got back when I got back to Baltimore, Maryland, and that area, and I was back doing stand up. I decided I was going to try to study theater, and I knew I had a fraternity brother who's the head of the theater department at Bowie State University. So I reached out to him. I was like, I just want to come and sit in on your classes. I won't be enrolled, but I just want to participate. And I did whatever productions they did, and I took classes. Also, while doing that, I remember I was reading the Hollywood Reporter, and it just so happened that the issue I was reading was the comedy issue. And they were talking about how when people discover comedians, they want to know that you're capable of working with other people. Because this was back when all the comedians were getting TV shows. So,
right.
And they were saying one of the best ways to do this is by studying improv. So I was like, okay. I looked up a improv group in DC, saw that they were having auditions, and I went and auditioned for the improv group. And it just so happened that I had a natural aptitude for improv. It was like they said to me, they said, in improv we have this thing called the improv gene. It means that some people just have the ability to improvise, and they will only get better by learning the techniques. But if you have that, you'll do fine. Now there's some people who don't, and no matter how much they study, they're not going to be that good at it. And I just so happened to be someone who had the natural aptitude for it. So I got into the improv group, and I was studying theater, and after a while, it was kind of like I realized that with my comedy being that it was, I just felt that my comedy was universal because I could work black crowds, white crowds, and everything in between. Church shows. I was doing church shows before there was even a church circuit. I mean, right. I remember doing church shows, and people were like, "What? You did comedy at a church?" It's like, "Oh yeah, you be clean, Maybe got a couple jokes about church. I don't know." And so I was like, I knew that what I had was universal. So I was like, I got to get out of just doing the Def Jam circuit. On top of it, at the time, I didn't even curse in my act. I mean, I do a little bit now, but not like a whole lot. But right. It was like, so I was a clean comedian working the Def Jam circuit, and it just dawned on me. I was like, even though I can make this crowd laugh, I'm never going to be the top dog over here. And I found that as Black comedians, you either have to go do the Black circuit, get as big as you can up there, and then make a lateral move, or you just got to work mainstream and work every crowd and come up the ranks that way. And I was like, I need to go that direction. So after about 6 years of doing the road, I was like, I'm going to start focusing on New York. So at first, I just started going back and forth from Baltimore and taking classes in New York. And then I established a presence in New York. And I was doing pretty well, but then I had a bad roommate situation up there, and I had to come back to Baltimore. When I came back to Baltimore, I was like, well, if I'm not in New York, first of all, I'm not going to tell anybody that I moved back. So if anyone calls me for an audition, I'm going to jump on the bus, go up and audition, and do what I got to do, and then come back home. If I can't get up there, I'll say that I'm working out of town, which wasn't a lie, because if I wasn't going up there, I was probably getting on stage down in, Maryland, DC, right. Or either going somewhere on the road. I also found a club, because I remember Tony Woods, who is a mentor to us all, but Tony Woods is one of my mentors. And he told me, he's like, you got to find a place that is your lab, a place where you can go and you feel comfortable and you can just experiment or whatever. So I went and I found a club that would let me headline once a month. It's no longer in existence. It was called Winchester's. And every month I would headline a show, pick my feature and my host, and I would get them to give me tickets. I'd paper the room, and they would take the drinks, and I would just be on stage for hour and a half. And I was just like, so even though I wasn't in New York, I was getting more stage time than my counterparts in New York, and just growing exponentially as a comic. Right. And kept going back and forth in auditioning. And I did that until I got cast in the national tour of Rent. So when I went on that tour, I saved my money, and then I moved back to New York to stay. And that was like 2002, 2003. And I've been here ever since.
Now I'm glad you went through that, and I wanted you to go through the entirety of it, because, and this is a person who has studied, got his degree, and just focused. A lot of times, I used to hear a lot of. I moved here to Los Angeles in 2008. Yeah, 12 years. But I used to hear a lot of things, and to me, it's late in the game, because I knew I wanted to move to New York when I was 19, but God had another plan.
Right.
But it's always funny when I hear people say things like, would you ever move back? Or how long are you going to give it? Or how, it's like, but when I remember reading an article by Dane Cook years ago when he was on top on top.
Right.
And he said he remember watching like Carson and stuff with his family and seeing different things and he realized early off, he said the game has changed. You can't get on Johnny Carson and it's not about getting on Carson anymore. He realized that you had to touch each individual. And I was looking at this, and it was people like I just interviewed Tracy Toms and another publicist and some people like that. And I knew when it was time to leave the Baltimore market. I was producing stuff, but you feel like, when you hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
And your plan is beyond that.
Yeah.
So you get to New York, you're doing your thing in New York. You start producing and headlining your own shows in New York too. Yeah. And so, and I love the energy of New York. I always say if I didn't have my daughter, I'd probably, just the pulse of it. It's like, don't close. We can hit another, the comedians be like, we can hit another coffee. We can hit another 3 stages. Then at 6 a.m. we get some breakfast. Then it's this after hour joint. And, so working that muscle, doing the thing. But what's so funny about it is that there was one point in time when you had to be able to sing, dance, play instruments. If you were gonna get on that stage, you had to be Sammy, Gregory Hines. You had to be, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, all these guys. Martin Short and Steve Martin have a show, and I'm watching it and I'm crying. I'm like, but they do a little bit of everything. And Steve Martin has a quote that always says, "Be so good that they can't deny you." Yeah. And he has a Grammy for playing banjo. It's like, so, and Jamie Foxx talks a lot about his grandmother said these would be tools to help get you out of Terrell, Texas. Yeah. And so have you noticed that your tools, well, obviously, your tools have been everything that you've had, nothing is wasted. Is that the key attribute to your longevity in New York, you think?
Well, I think that for me, it's a combination of things. First of all, I just get bored if I do one thing for too long. So being able to do different things, I enjoy getting away from whatever I'm doing too much of. And I get inspiration from things that, like, for example, as a comedian, I don't like to watch a lot of comedy and like to watch a lot of other comedians because I don't want to subconsciously.
We're naturally sponges.
Yeah, I don't want to subconsciously be like them. So I look, when I want to be inspired, I go listen to live music. I also have found that in actuality, musicians are the funniest. It's like a lot of comedians are dark and sad, and it's like they're funny on stage, and it's like not the same off stage. And if you want to have a good time, go hang with musicians, and they got the greatest stories. And also being a storytelling comedian, it's like I watch them, and I'm like, really inspired. Also, another thing I like to do is I like to watch the jazz documentary by what's the guy's name? Huh?
Ken Burns.
Yes, Ken Burns. And I found it's a couple of jazz musicians who are like I liken myself to them as a comedian. Because I do so many different things, I have friends who are more popular than me as comedians. And one of the main reasons they're more popular than me as comedians is because they just went the comedy route, and they focused, and they were there. And so I think about Thelonious Monk. You know, skill wise, I'm on the level with people who are more famous than me, but people don't know me as much as a comedian. Most people know me as an actor, or and it's like then they come to see me do stand up, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea that you were a stand up comic and that you were good at it." And I think about Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk was a peer of like Diz and Bird and all these guys, and he just wasn't getting the notoriety. He even reached a point where he lost his cabaret license and he couldn't perform live. And it was like, a lot of people were like, well, you should hit the road. He was like, no, he went home and just kept working on his craft. And then one day somebody decided to record him. And he recorded him, and he became like an instant legend. And it's like he took the long route. It's like, so he wound up ending up in the same place as his peers, but it was like, it seemed like he came out of nowhere to people who didn't know. And it's like, I feel like that sometimes when I see my friends with specials and, things like that. And I'm like, man, if I just focused on comedy, that would be the case. But they look at me and they're like, you're on Broadway, or they look at me and like, hey, you've worked with Woody Allen and you've worked with Harrison Ford and Diane Keaton and it's like you're on TV. I'm on TV tonight. It's like so I found it interesting early on when you said that when you started in Baltimore that my name was a name that you heard. I hear stuff like that all the time after the fact. Like I had no idea while I'm like right now. It's like a couple days ago, somebody was like, hit me in my inbox on Instagram. I was like, yeah, I was on someone's live and they were talking about you. You should go back and look at it. And I went to look at it. She said, and this person was like, I love Rick Younger. He's so funny. He's so this. I'm like, I had no idea. I guess one of the things we need to learn, sometimes we need to tell that person, but
terrible. Like when you were in high school and you got this crush on this girl, and then you see her going in life. She was like, I always had the biggest crush on you. He was like, what? Oh, two kids, and
you could have told me.
Why just say something? but yes, it's the what it's like. It's because you're doing the work, and it's great hearing you say that. Not because because I felt the same way when I came here to Los Angeles. I wanted to start from nothing. I figured nobody knew me. And when I started, by November, I was hosting at the Comedy Union. I didn't know that was unusual in Los Angeles. See, back east, the first thing you do is the show, get on stage, do what you got to do. That start doing that stuff here. And I didn't realize certain things were unusual. But then, I became a father. And it makes you step back in life. And then you really gotta pray and get focused and see where our niches are different. Yeah. And I think about, I remember when Pookie Wigington started managing Kev, and it was like I'm looking to promote Kev's piece and Kevin Hart, and then I remember going to his, DVD. I remember seeing certain people. I remember hiring certain people on my shows, and to watch them go forth, and it's like, man, was that? But that's not your path. See, there's only one Rick Younger. And if you had went the other way, like you said, you wouldn't have experienced. I mean, would you have ever imagined that you would be on Broadway? Was that your first? Was Mean Girls your first Broadway experience?
Mean Girls is my Broadway debut, and I thought I'd get to Broadway sooner because I was in Rent, the national tour of Rent, 2001, 2002. And usually, a lot of times people go from the national tour to the Broadway cast. And when I left the tour, I was auditioning for a lot of musical theater and stuff like that. And I was doing pretty good as far as getting further along in the process. A couple times I almost got to Broadway, shows closed and things like that. But then I started getting work in commercials and TV and film. And so it was kind of like, all right, I'm going to ride this one and go down this path. Because I've always felt like if you get the work, the next job will find you. You know, and it's
Right.
kind of like, if you do enough acting and get enough acting credits, any comedy club will book you because they're like, what? Rick Younger from the such and such show? Okay. He's going to get people to come to the show because they're going to recognize him from TV or movies. And so I also eventually was like, well, maybe that'll be my path to Broadway, because a lot of times people go and do Broadway shows once they get popular, and they're like, for 8 weeks only. You know, Tay Diggs. Well, Tay Diggs started on Broadway, but Tay Diggs will be in Chicago, and Brian McKnight is coming in and going to do this. That happens all the time. So I was like, maybe I'll get popularity in another area that will let me go and do Broadway. And then out of the blue, after years of telling my agent I don't want to audition for any musicals that aren't going to Broadway, which narrows, it's hard to get on Broadway if you've never been on Broadway. So usually you have to take theater jobs that are off Broadway or out of town and kind of just get known by the casting people. So when I said that, it was kind of like I kind of put myself in a position where the likelihood of getting to Broadway wasn't there. But a couple of years ago, my agent asked me, hey, they're going to do auditions for the Chicago company of Hamilton. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, for Hamilton, yeah, because once again, like if you are in the Chicago Hamilton company, when there's an opening on Broadway, there's a very good possibility that you could get the part. So I said yes to that possibility, but the audition never came to be. But then a couple of weeks after that, she sends me, hey, we have auditions for Mean Girls the Musical. It's the developmental lab. And the developmental lab that's the early stages where you perform it in a rehearsal setting, but like a very highly performed rehearsal type, where you're actually on your feet and you're singing the songs and everything, but you don't have costumes and you don't have all the sets and props and everything. But it was like developmental lab, and you're auditioning, you're going directly in for the creative team. So my audition was for Tina Fey, who's the writer of the book, her husband, Jeff Richmond, who's the music director, Casey Nicolau, who's the director, and Nell Benjamin, who's the lyricist. And, Lorne Michaels is the lead producer from, creator of Saturday Night Live. So I had an audition, and it's funny because leading up to the audition, the fact that I was going to be in front of them just kind of eventually just went to the back of my mind. Wasn't even thinking about it anymore. But also I had like a group of sides to audition with. And I was like, looked over all of them. And it was one that I was like, this one right here. It was the funniest one. It was the biggest one. And I was
Those that don't know, sides are scripts.
Yeah,
short
that you audition with. Yeah.
Like side, like potatoes and mashed potatoes.
Yes, I had mashed potatoes and corn on the cob. No,
I said just mac and cheese because Lauren really loved.
So I was like, I'm going to learn this one inside and out. The other ones I'm going to go over, but this one I'm banking on them asking me to do this. If I am wrong, who knows how it's going to go. But if I'm right, I'm going to be so ready. So I get to the audition, and it was like, they were like, so do you have a little something to sing? I was like, how little you talking? Because it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I was like, because, if it's just a little bit, I'll do some Stevie Wonder. But if y'all want the whole thing, I can't, because Stevie gets too high to be singing at 10 o'clock in the morning. And everybody laughed. But I was dead serious.
Right.
But then I was like,
it's 10 o'clock in the morning. You're like, it's 10 o'clock in New York morning.
Right. But it was like cool, because I'm like, all right, okay. As a comedian,
I got
him laughing. So I sung Overjoyed by Stevie Wonder, a little piece of that. And so I'm like, I'm always comfortable when you ask me to sing, I'm like, I got that. So I did that. And then they asked me to do the sides that I prepared. And I was like, once I got that first laugh and they were all with me, I was rolling. And so I did it, and they were like, "Thank you." And it just so happened I needed to go past my agent's office that day. So from the audition, I went to go hold on. Went to go see my agent, and while I was there, they were like, "So how was the audition?" I said, "I think it went pretty good. I made them laugh, so we shall see." And while I was there, my agent got an email. She said, "Well, you must have done pretty good because I just got an email saying we want to make sure that Rick Younger is available for the developmental lab." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds good." And then like later that night, my agent called and said, "Hey, how would you like to hang out with Tina Fey for a little while?" I said, "I think I could do that." And so I made the lab, but being in the lab is no guarantee that you will get to Broadway because there's the lab, then there's the out of town performance where a show goes to, like, in our case we went to DC and we were at the National Theater, and you're running the show and they're making changes and so it'll be ready to go to Broadway. Now they had made the announcement about who, over the summer they made the announcement of the people that were going to be in the show and so on and so forth. But I know people who have been in developmental labs and then didn't go further. As a matter of fact, I always had in my mind Shrek the musical had a different donkey for the developmental lab, a different donkey for the out-of-town performance, and by the time they got to Broadway, they had a third and different donkey. So I kept thinking, until I am on Broadway, I am not on Broadway. So it's like, so I did DC. Finally in DC, they gave us our Broadway contracts to sign. I was like, okay, but I still could go to rehearsal or and drop hot coffee on Tina Fey, or I could do something crazy, and it all be gone. So got to Broadway, and we're previewing and everything. My pictures on the side of the building and everything. Every day I'm checking to make sure it's still there just in case. And finally on April 8th, I went and checked one last time. April 8th, 2018. That's the night we opened, and I was finally on Broadway.
Awesome. And I wanted to. Usually, I'm like, okay, I want to get to different pieces of that, but I wanted to hear the entirety of the process. Yeah. A lot of people don't know the process, and it's coming from someone like, I know who Rick Younger is. Yeah. You can look and see his pedigree. I think when I first got here, I was like, "Rick, how are you getting on commercials?" And you're like, "Wait, this is the process that I go through, and then I make sure this, and but I appreciate your journey because it's a blueprint. It's the basic blueprint that anybody needs to be ready for. I like what you just said about the fact of, yeah, that's great, but okay, what is a Broadway contract? Okay, sign here. Okay, right. Y'all gonna come? Okay.
And it's like I was saying to you earlier about not knowing what people think of you and how people feel about you or how people view you. But it's also the thing that pushes me. I'm kind of always that guy that feels like I'm this close, but it's that I still got more to get to, because I'm living my dream. I'm doing all the things I ever said I wanted to do. If you'd asked me when I was a kid what I wanted to be, I would tell you I want to be in television. I want to be on movies. I want to be, I want to sing. I have made my living as an entertainer full time since 1994. Now, of course, I have higher heights I want to reach, and I know I'm going to reach all of them. But it's like it's still a journey, and we're Black in this industry, so it's like sometimes it's hard because we sometimes feel like if one Black guy gets a gig, then that means that it's going to be a while before they pick another Black guy. But it's
right.
He
got it. Like, all right, I'll go.
The other thing is that sometimes it takes longer because there aren't as many roles. Like,
right.
It's you see TV, you see film, you see movies, and a lot of times outside of shows that are written and produced by Black people, it's few and far between. And so it's kind of like you have that whole, oh man, it's like, when's it going to happen for me? But
right.
that's also one of the things that doing so many different things benefits me, because it's like I have an opportunity to just express myself artistically, and most of the time it's not dependent upon somebody else giving me a job. This is like, matter of fact, this Broadway gig is like the first time probably in my career where I've had an ongoing job where I had to depend on something or someone else, as far as, I better show up or I'll get fired, or, like, because one-shot gigs, it's like, it's hard to get fired from a one-shot gig, because all you got to do is show up one day and do it. It's hard to get fired from a comedy club, because it's like you only booked for that day or for that weekend or whatever. So it's like, to have a job where you're like, all right, okay, I got to show up tomorrow too. Right. But
see you tomorrow.
But it also, it's also put me in some good company, like to be able to say that Tina Fey knows who I am and Lorne Michaels knows who I am. And
I was about to say, you said was Lorne Michaels at your rehearsal?
He wasn't at my first audition, but I mean, they're there all the time. Like during the developmental lab.
The rumor is that Lorne doesn't laugh, so I wanted to see if he laughed.
He doesn't laugh. It's like a couple times he smiled, and that was like, wow,
Right.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy said when he auditioned one time, he did like this.
Well, it's funny because with playing the principal, I have a couple of times on stage where I'm facing directly towards the crowd. So, because I'm emceeing the talent show, so I'm right there and straight out in front of the curtain, looking at the crowd. So during the developmental lab, we're in a rehearsal studio, and they put up like some rows of chairs, about 4 or 5 rows, and so about maybe 25 to 50, somewhere between 25 and 50 people could fit in there. So Lorne Michaels is showing up and bringing Steve Martin, and you look over, Jane Krakowski's over there, Rachel Dratch, Kate McKinnon, and it's people from 30 Rock, people from
and Live,
Kimmy Schmidt, y'all. So it's like, so you're like performing for like famous people at your developmental lab, and then our rehearsal, because and we were like, man, it's kind of hard to rehearse when you're rehearsing in front of like people who you like don't want to embarrass yourself in front of, and so I'm like delivering these funny lines straight ahead, and Lorne Michaels and Steve Martin are like right there in front of me, and like like you said, he doesn't laugh, so it's kind of like, I know this is funny. I know it is, right? I'm gonna not look at you because you're not gonna mess me up. But yeah, it's like but that's the kind of company that you get to be in. I mean, so it's like, in addition to that, back in 2013, I wrote for Tracy Morgan one of his comedy specials. Okay. And so like, it's funny. It's like, so
I was about to ask, how did that come about with The Last OG? And if you're seeing this interview tonight, go look on Last OG. It's on tonight.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like Mark Theobald, who is now a writer on The Last OG. He's one of my best friends, and he's the one who hooked me up with the writing gig with Tracy for the comedy special.
Right.
And so so like I know the guys and everything, but I'm also the kind of person, I'm never one who's like trying to get a hookup. So, when it came time for me to go out and do my own thing, I was like, I can't keep, writing for someone else. I want to do my own thing. But like, with Mark being a part of the whole writing process, this particular part that I have in the show was basically a guy, Mezzo Mike. He's a hood legend, and he's famous for robbing people by singing to them. And when this character was created, Mark was like,
Mezzo Soprano Mike.
It's like, Mark was like, Rip's got to play this part. Now, meanwhile, Keenan Ivory Wayans was the showrunner for this year, and he had an R&B singer that we all know in mind for the part. And Mark was like, Rick, it's got to be you. But I had to go audition because of the fact that there was another person they had in mind. And I just went in and I was just like, I'm giving my performance. Like, I'm going all out. And I did. And so I got the part, and it was a great experience because in addition to, knowing Tracy and Mark, it was like I hit it off so well with the director. And this guy has worked with shows like Claws and Veep, and and he's been nominated for Emmys, and he was so generous. Like, so often you work with people and you trust that I must be doing a good job because I keep the job and it comes out and it goes well. But he was like, he emailed me after my first day of shooting and was like, dude, I am looking at the dailies and I'm cracking up watching you. And I just want you to know you did a great job, and that the guys in the crew have been impersonating you every day since you left. And I had one more day of shooting to do. So then I came back the next day. It was kind of like, I felt so comfortable, and everybody was like, "Hey, Mezzo Mike," and they were doing their impersonations and everything, and it just frees you to just give such a great performance. They let me improvise, and they were like, there was one scene where they were like, "We need a button for this, and we can't think of it." It's like, "You got any ideas?" I said, "Well, can I just run a few of them, and we'll see what we like." And so it was just a great experience. So
I want to before we get out of here, because you definitely have been probably the longest interview. Like I said, I wanted you to give because we got time. No, but I wanted you to give
nothing but time.
Yeah, right. But I wanted you to give. I wanted to hear it all, because somebody out there at a time like this, when they do have time to sit down and look, they're feeling pretty hopeless. They're feeling like it doesn't matter anymore. They're feeling like my gift is dormant. Other people, blah, blah, blah. And Rick Young is a prime example that you can follow your own vein and follow the flow. I want two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about off cuff, and then I will end with the family piece. I hear that off the balance of family. Men Tell All, Guys Tell All.
Today
with
show.
Is the Men Tell All on the Today Show? Is that what it's called?
Guys Tell All. I haven't
Guys
done that in a while, but I did it for like 10 years on
Right. So
show.
how did that come about?
That was, one of the things that people always say.
Relationship stuff is my thing, so I love.
It's like one of the things that people always say is that as comedians, actors, entertainers, we get most of our work from fellow performers giving us and so someone referred me when they were looking for a comedian to be a part of a man's panel to talk about relationship stuff. It was like they had no idea that I had wisdom and knowledge, and I'm not a relationship expert. I'm just a guy who's lived life enough where it's like I made enough mistakes so I can tell you, don't do that. That ain't gonna work.
Steve Harvey, but with his third book.
Yeah, right. But the other thing was that I also tried to give as honest an answer, and try to give answers where I wasn't worrying about what my wife would think. Which I'm separated now, but that's not why. We're not separated because I said too much on the Today Show. But I try to be as honest as possible without worrying about how it would look or to other people for me to be married and to give certain answers. And I think that's why I stuck around for so long, is because it was like they were like, Rick kind of balances the comedic thing with actually saying some stuff that is useful.
Right.
And so
how do you do that? How do you, now that you're a dad, and for the time being, like you said, you're separated right now, you're single dad.
Yeah.
And doing what you do. How is that balance thus far? I don't know how long you've been separated. I don't know. I know you always been a dad. How many? You have just the two?
I have two. Yeah. Well, for me, being an artist always gave me more time to be with my son, who's 11.
Right.
But then when I got Mean Girls, I got the developmental lab. My daughter was a month old, so her whole life has been me and Mean Girls. But so even though I have this schedule of 8 shows a week, 6 days a week, I do have mornings and daytimes, but also I get to share the theater experience, Broadway experience with my kids, which is like, that's the trade-off. It's like, I may not have as much time because every night I'm not home, but every Saturday or Sunday when we have 2 shows, I bring my daughter to the theater. She plays on the Broadway stage. She thinks that's her playground.
That's her playground.
It's like she comes into the theater, everybody knows her. Hey Lolo, hey, how you doing? She's leaving. Bye. See you guys there. I'll see you next week. She will come from ballet class, will have on her ballet stuff and go on the stage, and she's doing her moves and everything. And so even now with Corona and being home, she's actually said, "Daddy, I miss the stage." Like, I love to sing. I'm like, that
me
one
too,
right
baby.
there. She's little me. And so so between having all the extra time with my son, because being a comedian and an actor, so when he was little, I was with him more than his mother was with him, because she would go to work and we'd be together and for the longest time it was like, like there was a period of time where I didn't do daycare, it was just with me. And so the arts have given me the opportunity to spend more time with my kids. It's given me the opportunity to give them unique experiences that other kids don't have. And it's like, I think because I'm a comedian and an artistic person, I also treat parenting a little different than a lot of other people. Like, I don't put a lot of pressure. I feel like a large part of education is the experiences you give your kid.
Mm.
So, and I'm like, I hate homework. I'm like, we give kids homework, and I'm like, most of us don't take work home when we work a job. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and if you do that too much, you're gonna lose your family. It's like, why are we giving that to kids? School needs to happen during school time. But if you got that so obviously I'm not the only one who weighs in. So homework, that's her job. But you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, with that type of mindset, we have fun and creative things. Like, the way I read a story to them is way different than a lot of fathers would, because I turn it into a piece of theater, It's like,
Got to go into each character.
Right. And so like,
not this
yeah,
house,
so I just kind of use what I have and just take parenting like that. And the other thing is that I feel like, as a parent, it's just my job to give a blueprint, to not try to live their lives, not try to make them to be what I want them to be. And, because, people always say stuff like, because my daughter's cute, like, oh, you need to get a shotgun. I'm like, no, I don't. What I need to do is just be the example of a man in front of her that will make her want to have a man like me that will love her and care for her and allow her to be all that she can be. I'm not trying to control her. I don't want her to want to be with a guy who would try to control her,
Right.
And it's like, I try not to parent them too differently. I say too differently because they're two different individuals. So you got to take that into consideration. But
Right.
I don't want to be the kind of person who has certain things I'm like cool with my son, but not cool with my daughter. Like when you hear stories of people talking about, like the T.I. thing when he was talking about, policing his basically policing his daughter's vagina, and I'm like,
when the doctor got to say you really can't come.
It don't really work. But it's like I think we all know as guys, the girls who had fathers like that didn't necessarily behave like their fathers wanted them to behave when they got out of their father's sight.
Like, sure, no, he's driving away now. Driving away now. Come up the back, knock 3 times out. Like, whoa.
Right, it's like you Reverend
the dog's gonna hand you a note. The dog's gonna hand me a note out the dog's mouth. That's a key.
But yeah, so yeah, I just try to be real with them and just be a person who loves and takes care of them and provides them with the type of protection that a father should provide, but not trying to control them.
Well, that's a great place to end, because you taught me some things on that too, because I'm definitely the homeschooling thing. It's like 3 + 5.
I know, man.
3. But yes, brother, I appreciate your art. Rick Younger, thank you for taking time out. Hey, y'all, go check out Last OG. What network is that?
It's TBS.
TBS. It's hard to know because you can see it. When you have the digital television stuff, you can watch it all the time.
Here's what you can do, people. If you got smart TV, Roku, or Fire TV, go over to that search thing and put in the Last OG and let them lead you. I know that because like every city and every place has a different number for TBS, and but also know that if you don't catch it the first viewing, you'll be able to watch it on the app. You'll be able to watch it through your cable company or however you watch TV. So and eventually it'll be on Netflix. But please watch that now. Also, since you're home, on Netflix right now, I have another movie called Ordinary World, and Ordinary World is the name. So search for that on Netflix.
And what is it? Fried Chicken and White Bread?
Fried Chicken and White Bread is my comedy album. I have 2 comedy albums, Fried Chicken and White Bread. And come on now, just search me. I'm telling you, just search me on iTunes or Google me. I'm the first 6 to 10 pages of Rick Younger on Google. And of course, I'm at Rick Younger on everything.
Los Angeles earthquake. Okay. Where are you at again?
I'm in New York. I'm good. I can't walk without getting contaminated, but because we all packed in here together. But I don't have no earthquakes to worry about. So there's that.
Don't forget, at Rick Younger.
At Rick Younger. At Rick Younger on Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, Snapchat, YouTube.com/Rick Younger, YouTube.com/The Rick Younger Show, Facebook.com/Rick Younger page, or Google me. I'm the first 6 to 10 pages of Rick Younger on Google.
Rick Younger, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Time out of your busy. I don't know what you were doing tonight.
I mean, I'm busy with these kids, man.
They still up?
Oh no, they're at their mother's house right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they're with me all day. I'm daddy daycare, daddy homeschool. So yeah,
it's nothing like it, man. I wouldn't trade it for the world. You said it key. Yeah. Some people don't know, but the arts do allow you to be there for things that you would normally just miss. And getting a chance to see your kids grow and getting them a chance to know that they can communicate to a father, especially a Black man. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Love you, man.
Right,
thanks for taking time out.
Thank you, my brother. Thanks for having me. Love you too.